Hey, how's it going, man? How's it going?
It's going good, dude.
Awesome, awesome. Man, I have been waiting for this interview for, it feels like, a million years almost. I've been following you for a very long time, obviously. As you know, I comment on all your content. And I'm really excited about tonight, really excited to get this interview started. And really, excited to kind of get, some breakdown on Neo, what they're doing, the management, international expansion. And I'm telling you guys who are going to listen to this clip tonight, I'm telling you guys all over the country, I don't think there's a single person, anywhere in the country that covers, the stock as much as you do, especially for retail investors, and explains it in a way that just makes sense. Because obviously, as you know, there's a lot of people, whether it's, Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, that they cover stocks and they cover investments. But sometimes, it's really hard for the average retail investor to like kind of go through the whole video because they make it so dense. But I feel like, your content and the way you cover Neo and the way you've been covering it since day one is, really easy for the average, American and average retail investor, that may or may not understand the balance sheet or understand what's going on. You make it very digestible for them. You're not making a 3-hour video on them and talking about, X, Y, and Z. It's like, here you go. Here's the information. This is what you got to know. This is why it's important. And this is why I'm buying the dip. So I can't wait to get into this one.
All right. Well, thank you, by the way.
No problem, man. No problem. So let's get into it. My first question, cause a lot of, people I've been talking to, when I told them I was going to interview you, they were like, Miguel, why does he call himself the micro investor? Like, what is that? And, a lot of people think, well, micro investor, that means, you're only focusing on like a few companies or you're only focusing on a certain industry or sector, and they were kind of confused. And I know you made a video about it, a couple of years ago. Again, I've been following you for years, so I remember it. But, can you go ahead and, let the audience know, what was the thought process behind picking that name?
Well, I don't really remember the video in particular they made talking about it, but just in general, as far as a name for the channel, I was wanting to do something that was um, brandable as far as that goes. Like the name micro investor sounds like a brand. It doesn't sound like a person. It doesn't sound like a financial advisor. It sounds like this is somebody it sounds like a channel where it's not hyping up something. Micro is small. The we just get right to that. The micro is small. Investor talking about that it's not a big thing. And I'm somebody that doesn't like to really invest into a lot of companies. That is true. And I kind of just go with the flow. I just make smaller investments sometimes into stocks. I don't really go real heavy on a lot of different things, but I have really grown the amount of companies that I've been invested into. But sort of sense.
No, it does. It does. And, throwing small amounts of money, I'm glad you brought that up because, sometimes for a lot of my subscribers, especially the new ones that sign on, they tell me, Miguel, I don't know. I don't think the stock market's for me. And I'm like, well, why don't you think the stock market's for you? And they're like, well, I don't have a lot of money to invest. So it doesn't seem like it's worth it, And I'm like, of course it's worth it. You're thinking like, oh, I only have $600. I should invest in the stock market because $600 is nothing. And I think a lot of people think that way because they don't really fully understand like compound interest as an example, right? And they don't understand, how compound interest works. If you invest in a company, especially a high growth one, and you leave your money there for 5, 10, 15 years, the kind of gains you can have over an extended period of time, even if it's only $600, like at the end of the day, like when it comes to compound interest, time is your friend. The more time you can allow your money to compound, the more massive returns you're going to get at the end of the day. And so, when you brought up, throwing small amounts of money on stuff, it's worked well for you because, throwing small amounts of money on stuff and then the stock 4, 5, 6 years, is up, whatever, 100%, 300%, 400%. That, I feel like that allows people to compound at a ridiculously high rate within a short amount of time, especially if, again, it's in high growth companies. I'm not here on my podcast telling people to buy, J.C. Penney and Macy's and oh my God, Bed Bath and Beyond, we're going to the moon, like for the most part, I'm in high growth companies that are changing the world, whether it's a Snowflake, an Nvidia, a Tesla, names like that, semiconductor names, stuff like that. And so I feel like for you new investors who are listening, like even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still end up with a lot of money later. But the most important thing is like you at least try. And I think that's important. And as I transition here, talking about small amounts, as we talk about Neo, one of the things that stuck out to me when I first invested in Neo, I saw their debut. I remember vividly when they debuted on the stock market and they came about. And I remember telling myself, man, that looks interesting. At that time, I was already hearing about electric batteries. I already knew about Tesla. I knew about Elon Musk. And I'm like, here's an electric, vehicle company in China. This sounds very interesting. And of course, like, anyone else, I do my due diligence and I do my research. And I really couldn't find any like analyst that was really covering the stock in depth or really talking about the company in depth. A lot of them just kind of talked about it and, kind of just passively mentioned it, if you want an electric vehicle play, here's like 15 names you could look at and they'll throw Neo in there. But there really wasn't a lot of in-depth like breakdown on who they are and their business model and, all the catalysts they had for their company. In the early days, I don't feel like there was a lot of it. And so while I was going through and I was searching for like somebody to give me some kind of content on them, I feel like you were like one of the few, if not the only one, who is really covering the stock since day one. I'm curious, like when you first found Neo, what attracted you to them? What made you invest in them? And what did you see like early on, when you first invested in Neo during that IPO?
Okay, there was a couple things. Well, one, I liked the ambition behind the company. They wanted to be the Tesla of China. That's specifically what they were saying that they were wanting to be. William Li, that's what he pretty much said that his ambitions with NIO was that they were going to be the Tesla of China. And a lot of people took that, and that was a lot of the hype behind it. But he really believed that. That was the thing with Neo is he saw that eventually becoming a very large company. And besides that, they also, before the stock even launched, they had the fastest EV in the world, the EP9. So they had that to also back up what they were saying about being like a company that you can say, hey, this is legitimate. This is Neo, this Chinese electric vehicle company. Even though a lot of people thought that they were a joke because they weren't producing vehicles anymore and the amount of vehicles that Tesla was putting out, they still had something that was number one. The number one the number one fastest EV was what they had. I mean, it wasn't a street legal vehicle. It wasn't something that was available to anybody to buy, but they still had that. And so it gave everybody an idea of what this company is capable of. Even though they didn't have their own capabilities to manufacture that vehicle themselves, it was still part of their name and something that the company put out with that. And so that was mainly the main reasons. Other than, as I looked even more into it, I saw that the interest of what Tencent and Bailey Gifford had into Neo as well, with those being the two, at the time, the two largest shareholders of Tesla besides Elon Musk. So that was another thing that really caught my interest into them, because those guys were we're getting behind the company as well.
Yeah, and quick story, for me at least, one of the things that drew me into Neo as an investment, and I'm glad you brought him up, was Bailey Gifford. For those of you guys who don't know, they, at the time when I was invested in Neo, I saw a report that came out that said Bailey Gifford is investing in Neo. And I think at that time when they made their first investment, they became like, I believe even at that time, they were like the second or third largest investor in Neo. And I was like, wow, they're the second or third largest investor in Neo. That's interesting. But the reason that article struck out to me when I saw that report that Bailey Gifford was invested in Neo was because the headline was, the second largest Tesla investor in the world is now investing in this electric vehicle company, and it happens to be in China. So of course, I don't know if it was clickbait or not, but I mean, it was a factual statement. So I clicked on it and I'm like, holy shit, Bailey Gifford, owns the second most amount of Tesla stock in the world. The only people that own more, shares of Tesla is Elon Musk himself. And they're invested in this electric vehicle company called Neo. And not only did they invest in Neo, but they came in hard and became basically the second largest, investor in Neo during that time. I was like, well, you know what? I'm not smarter than they are. They must see something, because obviously even then, it's not like Tesla and NIO were the only electric vehicle companies in the world. So for a company like, Bailey Gifford to come out and say, we've been invested in Tesla for years. We're the second largest shareholders only to Elon Musk. And we've been riding Tesla stock for years and years. And now we're about to invest in these guys and take a massive, massive stake in their company on the ground floor. I said there has to be something to this. So initially, that's what drew my interest. But then talking about, who's invested in NIO, one of the things that also stood out to me in a positive way was Tencent. And the fact that Tencent, at that time, I forget, I think they owned like 15% of NIO at that time, and it had a massive stake in that. What are your thoughts on the fact that Tencent is such a major shareholder and, also on Bailey Gifford? The fact that the two of them together, I feel like they own like 30% of the company, it feels like at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
I really like that because that brings out like the more seriousness behind this company. When you look at who's standing behind the company, it's having the two people or the two companies, I should say, the two backers of Tesla, also being involved with them and being such large shareholders is something to take serious, And I think with Tencent, as far as where they got into with the stock was they were very interested in what NIO had as far as technology and the capabilities of that technology. Because I think Bailey Gifford sees it one way as just the investment that's going to grow, but I think Tencent saw it more of something that they can help develop with, other than just being an investor, but take it somewhere to add on to, because Tencent is video games and software, all different types of applications. They're really into a lot of different things. And that's one of the things that Tencent saw with NIO was getting behind their technology and getting their technology into those vehicles as well. And it wasn't just about just investing in the company and hoping it grows. And what Tencent actually had that was very beneficial for them with investing a lot in NIO was that Tencent had they had a license to actually do self-driving or to develop self-driving in the Shenzhen, or one of the cities there in China. And I think it was Shenzhen. They had the license to do that there. So when they invested in NIO, that was their opportunity to start making or getting that software to make a self-driving vehicle a reality with their investment into NIO. Because Tesla wasn't, anywhere capable of getting to China at that time. That wasn't something that was really being thought of back during the time that Tencent was investing into NIO. That kind of came quick with Tesla jumping in there in China and actually building a factory and everything getting done when it did. So that was kind of like the whole thing that was behind that was Tencent was very interested in getting their technology in those vehicles, growing their technology in those vehicles and having that investment grow. And I think that was, that's something that's going to be very beneficial to NIO and to Tencent as time goes on, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I love the fact that Tencent is a major shareholder. I love the fact that, Bailey Gifford's a major shareholder. To me, that provides stability for the stock price, but it also shows you validation in the business model and in the technology. So I really like the fact that you have two mega whales like that who are massive, massive shareholders. And that, I'm glad you brought up autonomous because I'll transition to that one then. Because I'm a person, I firmly believe, that autonomous is around the corner. I don't think we're going to have to wait 14 years for autonomous to happen. I think the technology is proving every single day. And a lot of my subscribers, they'll text me or they'll send me a video. And I'm pretty sure you've seen a million of these where it's like a guy who's sleeping in his Tesla while the Tesla's on the freeway somewhere in LA or San Francisco. And like people are driving on the freeway recording people sleeping in their Teslas while the car is going. And I'm pretty sure you've seen all these videos as well. But I do feel like autonomous is like, it really is right around the corner. And I know there could be some regulatory hurdles and, how do we, deal with this from a government perspective and this and that. And, there'll be some, bumps on the road. But overall, like autonomous is the future of the transportation industry, just like electric vehicles is, in my opinion. And I feel like autonomous is right there with it. And I feel like autonomous has a lot of applications, not just in vehicles, but, whether you're talking about space companies like a Virgin Galactic, or you're, talking about a lot of things, even with drones. I'm a big drone investor. And so with that being said, can you walk us through, like, who's making autonomous for Neo? How is that coming along? And how is theirs different from Tesla? And I know Tesla is kind of on its own level, so I'm not comparing apples to apples, obviously. But, just in terms of Neo, like, how is it different from Tesla? How are they making it? How's it coming along? And from that aspect, because right now, especially with the SPAC market, you see a lot of companies, coming on, through SPACs, and they're really focused on that autonomous, theme, whether they make like LiDAR technology, for example. There's one, I forgot the name of it, but the ticker symbol is Laser, LAZR. And there's other ones like that are coming onto the market. And basically they're just, using LiDAR or whatever technology, to allow vehicles to be autonomous, because most automotive companies don't make their own autonomous software. Most of them are like 90% of them, it feels like, are just going to license it from a company that actually just does solely, autonomous, software and autonomous equipment, or, whatever the case may be. So with that being said, with Neo, can you walk us through how theirs is coming along, how it's, similar or different from Tesla, and, how that's looking like these days?
I don't know exactly everybody that's making the autonomous for Neo. What I know is that the ET7 is going to be the first vehicle that's going to have these capabilities. And as far as the technology that's in that vehicle, is using technology from Qualcomm to Ford, as well as NVIDIA technology. I don't really know the specifics on who's actually doing all the systems inside of it. I know that they're doing a bit of work with a business that's I forget the name of the company, but it's Intel is the owner of it. They have several different people that they're working with for this technology. I don't know everybody exactly who's all involved into it at this time. Like, in the top of my head, I'm sorry, but there is they are making some pretty good advancements into it, and apparently it is supposed to be coming out with the ET7, I think, next year in January, or at least the vehicle itself is coming out next year in January, and should have a basic model of their autonomous driving technology inside of it.
I can't wait for that one. I really can't. I'm really excited to see how that one plays out, because I really feel like, this is a company that has a lot of companies who are backing it that are in the tech space. And I feel like they're going to get a lot of help when it comes to developing and improving, any autonomous that they use. But, a few seconds ago, you brought up, Tesla's factory in Shanghai, which was really incredible, because I remember, because obviously, like you, I've been invested in Tesla for many years, and I remember when they first broke ground in China, and Elon was out there with the shovel, and everyone's clapping and smiling for the cameras, and it took them like a year, like roughly like a year or less, to go from breaking ground in China for the Shanghai factory to having a fully operational factory in China. That was mind-boggling, that they were able to go from breaking ground to a fully operational factory that fast. So, sticking with the Tesla comparisons here, a lot of people ask me, Miguel, but is Neo going to really be a good investment? Aren't they competing with Tesla in China? I believe in Elon. I believe in Tesla. So therefore, why am I invested in Neo? Because if Tesla just built a factory there and they have the best technology and they got Elon and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I don't think Neo's going to stand a chance. Won't they just kill him? Can you, explain for the audience, how they actually compete with Tesla, and the ways they don't compete with them in some ways? Because I know, from your side, you've talked about like the price difference in their vehicles, the average price difference. And I think more importantly, you've brought up the fact that, China, the way China is, and we can talk about this next, the way China backs Neo. But just for this question, like, what they're doing with like EV tax credits and all, like, I want to call it shenanigans, but all of the subtle things that China is doing from a regulatory standpoint and a tax standpoint that is really helping a company that like Neo, win over consumers and customers over a company like Tesla just by the way that, they're doing their EV tax credits and then how they compete in terms of price point and things of that nature?
Well, I don't really see them being a big competition, especially that neither one of them can produce enough vehicles for the actual demand that is out there. I think that's one of the things that needs to be looked at when you're doing a comparison is that there's so many people in China and the amount of EVs that are out there is just so limited. And that's the direction that everything is going there in China. So I think that competition itself is really good. It is great to have competition, but there's so many people that would like to buy a vehicle that is China-owned company. That's where I think NIO and XPeng and Li Auto, like those companies will be beneficial in that way. Something that Tesla does not have. And I think that's going to really help out NIO in the long run with them being specifically a Chinese company and Chinese technology, really involved in that. I think that Tesla has a lot that will go for it, but it is still an American-owned company, and it's like the first American-owned automotive company that is actually building inside of China. I know that there's other U.S. companies there in China that have vehicles, but there's no one really building any vehicles and selling them specifically inside of there. They're like third party usually. So I think that that's going to be something that's going to really continue to help out NIO in the long run. And especially all the advancements that both these companies have done is going to be great for both of them, in my opinion. As far as pricing goes, I don't know. I think as pricing is just going to get more affordable for both these companies. Of course, the government's doing a lot to try to get people to buy EVs right now, but I think that as they continue to manufacture more and get things more dialed in, that the price will come down, be more affordable. And the competition itself is just great to have for any company because it makes them both, it gets them both having to compete more with pricing to get it priced down, as well as it just makes costs better for everybody, in my opinion. So I think that they're both going to just benefit in general, from being the early ones in China.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, as a long-term investor in both these companies, but in particular NIO, one of the things that I constantly talk about on my podcast, and I feel like long-term investors are not, I don't want to say they're not like factoring it in enough, but I just don't feel personally a lot of people are like paying enough attention to it. And I don't know, maybe, 10 years sounds like a long time, but to me it really doesn't. It's the fact that China, like most countries around the world now, it feels like China is one of many countries, that is coming out and saying like, we want to be carbon emission free by 2030, 2035. We want to be eco-friendly. We want to be, fighting climate change. And, when China comes out with like, announcements that we're going to ban all vehicles that are, combustible engines by the year, 2030, 2035, right? And it's like, oh, okay. And by the way, you're in California, so you know this, and all my subscribers in California, you guys know this too. Like, California just came out and they literally just did the same thing and said, we're gonna ban, I forgot if it was the use or the sale. I think it was the sale. We're gonna ban the sale of any car that runs on a combustible engine, by the year, 2035. So over the next 10, 15 years, everything either has to be an electric vehicle or they have to use like hydrogen fuel cell technology. And, California is not going to be the last state to do it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of states that follow suit. And so with that being said, I look at a country like China with the 1.6 billion people, or, roughly what it is out there. And all of them over the next 10 years are going to be forced legally to drive a car that's either electric or runs on some kind of like, alternative, eco-friendly, fuel system, like hydrogen fuel system as an example. But for the most part, they're all going to be forced to buy electric vehicles. And I look at something like that, and you mentioned it just now, like NIO and Tesla cannot keep up with the demand that they have in China. Like the main reason they're not selling more cars in China is because they literally can't build them fast enough. The problem is not demand. It's never been demand, in my opinion. The biggest problem for both these companies, and I guess this is a good problem. I wouldn't even categorize it as a problem. If anything, it's a champagne problem. But they literally have so much demand, they cannot make the cars fast enough. Neither of these companies can. Demand in China is extraordinary. And this is demand that's existing now that's creating a backlog for them. And the law hasn't even taken effect in China yet. And so as a long-term investor, I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, a country with 1.6 billion people is going to be forced where no one can drive anything unless it's electric. And people are literally complaining on the earnings report or earnings call that they only sold 42,000 instead of 44,000 vehicles in the quarter. I'm like, in the next 10 years, we're going to be looking back at this like, oh, wow, people really cared about that back then. Like, eventually I can see this company selling millions of cars a year in China alone, let alone, in the next couple of years as they expand into Europe and expand into the United States and then expand into South America. Just in China alone, they're probably going to sell millions of vehicles a year. And so as a long-term investor, like, when I look at like headlines like that coming out of China and I see similar rhetoric coming out of Europe, and then we see what's happening in California, and again, other states will follow, like, I just feel like that's sometimes not enough attention is getting, paid attention to that. What are your thoughts on that as a long-term investor for NIO and Tesla as well?
I think you're exactly right with that too, because if we just look at here in the United States, even if you weren't going to think about the laws that California is putting in place and then other states that would follow, in general, it's going to go that direction anyways. It's not going to be by 2030 the law. It's going to be by 2030, no matter what, everybody most likely is already going to be making electric vehicles, in my opinion. So as far as Tesla here in the United States, they're way ahead of the game. I look at what other companies here in the U.S. are doing. They're like what Ford just recently did with that Mach-E. I think that's kind of sad. I was really rooting for that vehicle, but Tesla's just way ahead of the game here in the United States. And as far as when you look at like NIO and Tesla in China, those two are way ahead of the game, as well as Xpeng and Li Auto. They're way ahead of what everybody else is doing because they have those years of experience. They have those trials and errors. And like the example I was making with Ford, when somebody that isn't doing what they're doing already and they try to do it and try to perfect it, it's not perfect. It takes a while to make something perfect. And I think that as time goes on and everybody's as that switch into EV and everybody's producing it, Tesla and NIO are going to be way ahead of the game, in my opinion. Especially because, like we were saying, that they can't keep up with supply and demand right now. It's not a problem of them not being able to sell, NIO being able to sell 20,000 vehicles or whatever a month right now. It's a problem that they can't produce that many vehicles a month. So as time goes on, things are just going to get better and better, and they're going to produce numbers that are just insane. And the average amount that they're going to be doing 10 years from now, in my opinion, will be, could easily be, 100,000 plus vehicles, 200,000 plus vehicles, a month, in my opinion. I think that they could easily be producing a couple million vehicles a year, if not more, when you look at it, especially for how many people are in China. So that's my opinion about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you 100%. And so that transition, because you brought up a good point with other auto manufacturers, like a Ford. And I don't want to pick on Ford, because I feel like there's a lot of other third rate auto manufacturers that I don't know how they're still alive. They're the ones that I think Tesla will ultimately eliminate and put into bankruptcy. And I don't think Ford's necessarily on that list. At least it's not first on the list. But I look at other companies, like just as an example, like a Honda or a Nissan or a Buick or, a couple of the other ones. And one of the things that stands out to me, at least, is something Kathy Wood said. And she said it a couple times now, but she basically said the problem that the traditional auto manufacturers have, not just in America, but in the world, but mostly in America, if we're being honest, is the traditional auto manufacturers have dismissed the concept of electric vehicles, and they dismissed the technology, they dismissed the demand, and they basically said that this is a niche thing, no one's going to buy it, this is like just a goofy thing kids would buy, no one really cares about electric vehicles, no one's really going to buy it, this is a stupid thing, it's a waste of money. And they said that about Tesla for years, and I mean years. A lot of these CEOs for these automotive companies pretty much just, talk shit about Elon Musk for a very long time and dismissed the technology, dismissed the demand for electric vehicles. And they did it for a long time. And now that they're all forced and finally waking up and pretty much having to admit that Elon was right and the technology and the demand is vindicated now, and as they're transitioning into making electric vehicles, one of the things that Kathy Woods points out is one of the biggest problems they have right now as they try to transform themselves from a company that makes vehicles that run on gasoline and combustible engines to a company that makes electric vehicles is the fact that in order for them to make a factory that makes electric vehicles, they have to shut down an entire factory, which means none of the cars that they're making in that factory every day, every month, and every year will now be produced, which means they're producing less cars a year. They have to shut down their entire factory. They have to swap out all of the equipment because, again, the transmission that goes into a Buick isn't the transmission that goes into a Tesla, right? And so every single part of that factory that creates pieces for their traditional, car has to be completely removed, completely scrapped, thrown into a junkyard, and they have to bring in whole new, manufacturing tools and equipment that are designed specifically to make electric cars. Then by the time they're done doing all that, they have to retrain all of their workers that work at the factories because what they know how to do is put a muffler, put a transmission, put this, put that. But now they're installing an electric vehicle battery. Most of those employees don't know how to do that. Now they're, attaching, autonomous software. They don't know how to do that. Then you have to retrain all those employees to know how to build an electric vehicle as opposed to one that runs on a combustible engine. And then finally, you actually have to start building the actual vehicle itself. And so Kathy Wood says this is going to take a very long time. Like you just said, most of them have never done this, never thought about doing it. They're only forced to do it now because they realize this is the future, whether they like it or not. And it is going to take trial and error for them to get it right. They have to shut down every factory they have around the world, swap out the equipment, retrain the workforce, start making the vehicle, and hope that people actually like what it looks like and they actually, want to buy it. That is going to be completely cost ineffective. It's going to take years to get done, and they are so late to the game. In the meantime, in between time, Tesla is literally going to be, running laps around them, literally and figuratively. And so with that being said, as you look at this automotive landscape, and the competition that NIO and Tesla have from traditional auto manufacturers, I just, I'm not saying they're all going to go bankrupt. But I'm saying, like, as these companies continue to take market share around the world, especially in EV sales, I feel like a lot of these automotive companies are going to get left behind. What are your thoughts on that market share dynamic?
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I think that these companies, all these other companies that are out there, they're going to have a big struggle when they are going to be doing their whole switch because we know how much money it's going to cost them. They're looking at spending billions of dollars on research and development, and as time goes on, they're going to have to test these vehicles that they're making, which we know that they're all just getting started at doing that. We know that we know where Ford is with their truck that they're making, their F-150, about how they've been testing it out for a couple of years now. But during this time, Tesla was already so advanced with EVs in general, which gave them a big competitive edge when it came to making the Cybertruck. They already knew all the ins and outs of electric vehicles and what they were doing. So as so many people are interested in buying EVs right now, Tesla, in my opinion, is going to have a big competitive edge when they launch the Cybertruck. And as we see more and more companies try to get into this market, I think that they're going to just be years behind from what everybody else is doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And then, speaking of the technology, I think one of the coolest things, and you've covered this in depth a lot, I think one of the coolest things about Neo, and a lot of people have pointed this out to me, is their battery swap technology. I think their battery swap technology is very innovative. It's very different. You know, a lot of companies, even the Tesla, they basically just like use a charging station, and like in the case of Tesla, they have specific charging stations only for Teslas, right? And so I think the way America is going to go in terms of the way we handle electric vehicles in our economy and in our infrastructure is basically just to have charging stations. And, you know, obviously listening to Joe Biden, the first thing he always says is charging stations, charging stations, charging stations. So it looks like that's the way America is going to do it. But I look at the way Neo's doing it with the battery swap technology, not necessarily charging the battery at a charging station, but more so just like swapping the actual battery itself. I think that's really interesting, and I think that could have a lot of runway ahead of it, you know, especially in big metropolitan cities and as they expand into Europe, which I think is roughly around 2023. I think their battery swap technology is just, it's genius in so many ways. Can you talk to us about that? Because I feel like that could end up being one of the fastest growing, you know, parts of their business.
Yeah, I think that has a lot more potential to keep growing, because the swaps only take them about 3 minutes. They have the battery placed in a location that's very easy for them to be able to take out. And they have their whole battery as a service that they have. So people that are buying their vehicles at a cheaper price than they would otherwise, if it included the battery, they're able to go between getting a battery put in that has an even longer range than say if they were to buy a model that had the lower end range. Now they can buy one that can go, you know, an extra X amount of miles, and that's a big benefit. A part of that battery swapping that they have that benefits them a lot is it gives those customers the ability to just go in, get a new battery in 3 minutes instead of waiting at a charging station for who knows how long, because we know from looking at how long the Tesla supercharger stations go, they're not always perfect. Nothing as far as charging goes. There's different things that can kind of interfere with how fast they're going, and also with like the battery could overheat, or or there's just a little bit too much on that at those stations at that time. They're not putting out, you know, the 150 kilowatts or 300 kilowatts. You know, they're doing much less than what they say they can do. So that battery swapping, getting in and out of there, saves them a lot of time and allows them to, you know, choose the type of battery that they want. If they're going on a longer trip, they get that longer battery. And I think that's something that as time goes on, the market for that is going to be big, unless if we see something with the whole charging stations that can charge a battery in, you know, 7-8 minutes, which we know that there's people out there that are working on that, but that's something that's not there right now. And until that's a real thing, I think that the battery swapping has a big competitive edge over the way that things are done right now, regardless of how fast, you know, the supercharging network is or how fast these other companies are currently doing it. It's still nowhere close to 3 minutes that Neo is capable of doing at the moment.
I agree. I agree. Now, you know, I'm invested in charging stations. My two big ones are Charge Points and CLII, which I'm still waiting on the merger vote on. So just as like an aside question, what charging station companies are you invested in? Which ones do you like the most? Because I feel like that's definitely a sector that, you know, I know there's probably a lot of short-term traders that are like, oh my gosh, when this infrastructure bill gets passed, you know, all these charging station companies are going to explode. Their stocks are going to explode. They're going to get every subsidy under the roof. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I do think that's probably going to happen. And that's probably going to last during the entire, you know, Biden administration, just my opinion. But ultimately, I think charging stations are just a great investment. Even if you're looking past the Biden administration, if you're just looking at a 10-year horizon, I mean, eventually every vehicle in the world, whether it takes 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, eventually they're all going to be electric or rely on some kind of charging network. And so when I look at it from that standpoint, I'm not just thinking, oh, this is a great Biden administration stock. I'm thinking this is a great infrastructure stock for the world, like overall. And one of the things I say on my podcast, is like, a lot of people wish that their grandma or their grandpa or their great grandma invested in like ExxonMobil back in 1964, or they had a relative that bought oil stocks back in like the 40s or 50s. We all wish we would have had that because, a lot of those families are now basically oil billionaires. And I think this is a way for a lot of people to basically get on the ground floor of that next, revolution as it pertains to like fueling all of the transportation industry. And just, if your grandma or grandpa or your great grandparents didn't buy oil stocks or oil back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when people were transitioning from riding horses to actually buying cars, right? Like, I think this is that next, revolution and transformation we're seeing, from a public transportation side of things. So, what charging, station companies are you invested, if any at all? And, what are your thoughts on that as an investment, as an aside to this?
Well, I'm invested in True Charge Point. That's my favorite one that there is. And then I dabbled a little bit into investing into Blink. I do like ChargePoint. That's the one that I'm the most bullish on. I think that they have a lot of potential. I know that there's a lot of controversy with Blink. So I think that ChargePoint, though, is one that is going to be one of the major ones, or already is one of the major ones. But I think that the amount that is going to grow, and the whole industry in general, Blink and every other EV charging company out there, I think that they are, like you said, like oil, like investing into oil. I think that over the next 10 years, when we have pretty much, I'd say, I know I'm going to sound probably way too bullish here for some people, but I think that like we'll probably see about 80% of the vehicles being sold in 10 years, if not more, being EVs at that time. So I think we're going to be seeing we're going to be seeing gas stations starting to be few and far between, instead of seeing EV charging stations few and far between. And I think we're actually going to see in the next couple of years, like the next 2 years, I think finding an EV station is going to be way easier now. Way easier then than it is now, because even right now, I know people are stretching it as far as they can to get to the next station when they're doing long trips. But in my opinion, even 2 years from now, I think that we're going to see possibly, 3 times or 4 times the amount of stations as we currently have. Maybe even 5 times the amount of stations even the next 2 years, in my opinion, just by how quickly we're seeing EV sales at the moment. And as there's so many companies right now that are coming out with vehicles that are talking about mass producing, like Lucid Motors and even Lordstown Motors and everybody in general, and all these smaller companies out there. Just the market in general is going to grow. And with what we know with these larger manufacturers, with what Ford's doing with their big push into EV, it's going to be something that is going to grow beyond what a lot of people are even thinking right now. I think that we're going to see ChargePoint and Blink and everybody else quadrupling their price, within the next couple of years. And then I think over time, over the next 10 years, I think that, buying it right now, if you're getting it for a steal, when you look at where it's going to be in 10 years, when you see that many vehicles being sold that are EV. And I think that that's something that you really have to think about, that's where it's headed. I think that gas stations are going to just be basically a quick stop where you just go in and get a soda or whatever, and you can charge your car. If not, you can charge your car at the restaurant you're going to eat at, or you can charge your car at at Target, which pretty much all these places I'm saying you can already do, which is already the reality of EV. And I think it's just going to grow. I think that there's going to be so many more deals made with random businesses to offer the ability to charge there, and it's going to be a revenue stream for other people, and that's what's going to really help it grow. As besides just the vehicle sales, I think that the big competitive part with EV charging stations is that anybody can get them. It's not something that is strictly to a gas station. It's something that anybody can have. You can have it at your house, but you can also have it at your at the clothing store you're going to, or you can have it um, at the DMV. It can be anywhere, and that's the market for. The market will grow extremely large, pretty much where um, a good amount of parking spots at any place you go to will be able to charge, and you pay right there. I think it's going to be that big of a thing, and it's going to grow huge with as time goes on.
I completely agree with you. I really do. I think it's the future. I don't think it's just a Biden administration kind of investment. I really do think that's the future of all of transportation around the world. Going back to Neo for a second, because as we continue to talk about the fact that electric vehicles are the future, they're not going to stop. Neo is going to be a huge player in the global market. One of the things, that I have to talk about, and, again, feel free to talk about it however you want, but we have to talk about, the gorilla in the room, and that's China, and that's the Chinese government. They have been backing, and you've documented this very well, by the way. I think you're the only one that documented as much as you do. But China has been a massive, massive supporter and backer of NIO. And I'm not saying they don't do that for other electric vehicle manufacturers in the country, but when it comes to NIO specifically, the Bank of China and the government of China has given them unprecedented amount of financial support. I mean, they give them 0% loans every other day, it feels like. I mean, not really, but they give them as much money as they want, basically. 0% interest, favorable rates. They don't have to pay them back until like 2024, 2025, 2026. So all the terms are favorable for NEO. Interest rate 0. Get as much money as you want. On top of that, you see what they're doing from a regulatory aspect in terms of like EV tax credits, where only companies like NIO can really take advantage of it because of their price point versus a Tesla. And I look at everything the Chinese government is doing to support NIO. And, as Kathy Woods, likes to say, China is very dedicated to having a national champion in the EV race. And in many ways, I feel like she's pretty much talking about NIO and then some other ones, of course, too, but mostly talking about NIO. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me personally, I like it because I can be invested in it. And I'm not going to talk out of both sides of my mouth, because if NIO was a private company and I wasn't able to invest in it, I would probably be very angry and I would say, go Elon, go kill them. They got nothing on you, bro. But because I am an investor and you can invest in NIO, obviously I have a corrupt opinion there because I'm a shareholder here. But with that being said, because I am a shareholder, all of a sudden I'm not angry or mad about it. Now I'm like, go China, keep supporting these guys because I want the stock to go higher. And the only way the stock goes higher is if the company continues to grow. And it feels like China's giving them unlimited gasoline on this fire they created. What are your thoughts on that one, on the amount of, fiscal support and everything that the Chinese government has done through their banks, which are nationalized, to help NIO out, not just, against Tesla. It's bigger than that. It's about helping them expand internationally and continue to grow and eventually take global market share.
Well, I think that as far as China looks at it, is there is basically going to be one big winner when it comes to it. They know that there's going to be other people involved, but they have to look at who's doing what right now, and they're not going to get behind Tesla because that's not a U.S. owned company. So the one that they basically had originally to go with was NIO, and NIO has been making a lot of advancements as far as the whole EV market goes. They're very the name itself is worth a lot. I think NIO's name is worth a lot more than Xpeng or Li Auto. And then also, I think that China's interest in it is a lot to do with the amount of drama that these other companies have. I think that there's a lot of problems that Xpeng has and controversies that Xpeng has that NIO does not have. And I think that also benefits NIO more because Xpeng has that lawsuit with someone possibly stealing information on autonomous driving. And that could be bad for China to get behind and go as hard as they are with NIO and investing in something like that because of that controversy. So NIO really is a more squeaky clean of a company, and because they were one of the first ones to really say, "Hey, we're going to be the next Tesla," and they're seeing how much. I think that China's seeing how much money Tesla has been making, how big of a company Tesla is, and they were like, we need Tesla here. We need to allow Tesla to come to China and produce vehicles because, that's where they want to go. And I think that really, that them getting so much behind backing them financially as an investor is the security of knowing that NIO is not going to go bankrupt. We don't have to worry about that, which we had to worry about when we were investing in NIO early, when we were in NIO in 2019, which was a disaster for some people. I got so much feedback then. Everybody disliked me. Watched my old videos, and I think I deleted so many comments from people that were just so negative on the company that just disliked the company for having a stock price that went from $6 to $10, 11, 12, all the way down to eventually $1 and 70 cents or whatever it got to. I forgot what it got to. Everybody just thought this company was a joke, and how dare they say that they're the next Tesla. And I just like that how China backed this company. They saw them being a company with real potential to really change things around in China and make it more competitive. And it has. I think if NIO didn't have that name and that reputation that they had in China, that Tesla more than likely would not have gone there. And I think that what China looks at is the backers of NIO, who's invested in the NIO, and knowing that the people from Tesla that back Tesla are with NIO. I think that there's just a lot of different things in general that makes NIO so attractive to the Chinese government, and makes them feel comfortable with putting so much money behind it, because they could really do that with anybody, and they choose to do it with NIO just because of those specific reasons. Who's backing it? The controversies that they don't have, the technology that they have, and how much their name is worth. Just how everybody knows NIO and their little artificial intelligent little character that they have in their vehicles. All that, I think, is just what really attracts China to it.
I agree. I really agree with that. And then, as we get to the end of this interview, one of the questions I was curious about, because you've been invested in Tesla and you've been invested in NIO for a very long time, and you've seen every single dip imaginable. I mean, again, I always tell the story, but as a Tesla investor, one of the moments where I gobbled up and feasted on as many shares of Tesla as I could is when the stock pretty much collapsed, when Elon Musk went out and smoked weed with Joe Rogan on his podcast, and oh my gosh, everyone freaked out. And like a week later, the stock was down 65%, and it was just crashing to the ground. And I could not run fast enough to deposit money in my brokerage account. And I was buying shares, 10,000. I was just backing up the bank, trying to buy as much Tesla shares as I could. And obviously that worked out in the end, but even then I was thinking about it as a long-term investment, not, oh my gosh, I'm going to get rich by 2021, but with that being said, as someone that's, bought in Tesla shares and NIO shares over the years, rode every single dip, bought every single dip, and you never stop believing, in these companies, I'm sure you've, seen massive gains on your, investments in Tesla and NIO. And I'm just wondering, as those gains have continued to skyrocket, over the years as you've been invested in them, how are you balancing that? Are Tesla and NIO, as an example, two of your, top 5 holdings? And how do you manage that balancing act? Because I know for a lot of people, they ask me, Miguel, I bought this stock and, it tripled and quadrupled. Should I trim some and then move it into this other company that I also really like? That way I can stay balanced. Or do I just leave it there and just continue to, hold it forever and just let the gains come as they go. So I guess that's a two-part question there for you. How have you balanced, over these biblical runs between Tesla and NIO over the last few years? And are those two both in your top five in terms of holdings, or what does your top five holdings look like these days?
Well, Tesla would be my number one holding, but it's not because as of being able to take advantage of those capital gains and things that have come up in my personal life, it was just a good time to sell out a number of those Tesla shares, just because I was buying in at times. If you think about it, before they had their whole split, I, I was basically buying it for very cheap, if you look at it that way. So I made some really good gains on Tesla, and it was very beneficial for me at that time when I did sell to sell as many shares as I could out of the stock. Now, Neil, on the other hand, is one of my top five holdings, and that Neil and Plug Power were ones that were a big surprise to me during the time that I was investing in those, because they were just penny stocks. I was investing in those as penny stocks, and I was really surprised as we got into when we got into 2020, and we really saw these companies take off. And both those are in my top five largest holdings. I also have other more secure investments like ETFs that make up my top there. But as far as Tesla goes, I wish I could say that Tesla still is my number one, but I just had to take advantage of some of those gains with it, just because of how much that stock went up. And also just to throw this out there, I'd never purchased any Tesla in 2020. By the way, I stopped buying Tesla in 2019, at the end of 2019 in December. So that was the last time I've ever bought Tesla. So if you think about that, and you think about the gains that were made since that time, it was pretty substantial. And I actually invested some of that money into real estate since then.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because, we hadn't talked about this, and I didn't want to, put your information out there. But since you just mentioned it, crack the door open for me. Yeah, because a lot of my subscribers are probably going to say, "Oh, but Miguel, he doesn't even own Tesla anymore," or he doesn't own as much, I should say. And I wanted to say, but I didn't want to say it until you just brought that last piece up. But you actually, sold a lot of those shares, and you've been investing into real estate lately, or maybe not lately, but you've been investing into real estate and diversifying your like overall investment portfolio. And I got to think and imagine that must feel like really freaking amazing to take basically, I don't want to call it free money because there was a lot of stress and a lot of research that went into your, all the investments you make. But basically you were taking the money you were making from the stock market and you were selling that and investing into like different real estate properties and diversifying and expanding your, investment portfolio overall, and so now, when you look at your investment portfolio, you're like, wow, I made one great investment. It exploded, whatever, 1,000%, 5,000% over the years. And I was able to take that and expand into other avenues and other, sectors of investing. And that's just, only allowed me to accumulate, more, financial wealth and financial stability for myself. I got to think that feeling must feel amazing, being able to take stock market money and just, buy real estate properties across different places. I could only imagine what that must feel like on your end after years of being invested and years of dealing with bears telling you that Tesla's going to zero.
Yeah, yeah, it is nice, and I have very big um, dreams, or very big plans, I should say, with real estate that I want to do. I want to buy actually some very large properties, not like big houses. I mean like land. I want to buy more land that I can actually use to make even more money off of, and that's an avenue that I really want to also get into is just take investing into and to as many opportunities as I can to just continue growing wealth, because I think it's very important, not just for myself, but for my next generation, for my kids. It's very important to establish myself in that way, because I didn't grow up with money. I grew up very poor, and I just always been somebody um, that has always been interested in, one day I'm going to be rich, or one day I'm going to be very successful. And that's just keeping those dreams, and keeping that hope, and keeping that fire inside of you, and just um, and then eventually accomplishing something like that. Eventually accomplishing real estate. Everybody's dream is to own a house, and if you can invest a stock, and put make micro investments into something, I should say, and grow that over time. Like, say, I think I started investing into Tesla maybe late 2017 was probably when I first got in, but I was very, very bullish on Tesla in 2018 and 2019. And just making very small investments in the Tesla has rewarded me very well, and it's changed my wealth in a way that is would be unimaginable, especially things that I was doing beforehand, where I was just an entrepreneur, just somebody trying to have a business, and keep it going. And instead going, okay, I'm no longer running a business anymore. My business is now my investments. This is what I do for a living. I talk about it on YouTube to keep my passion there. I don't care how many subscribers I have. I don't care how much I hype up a stock. It just is all something that just really helps me be happy, and it keeps me going, and so being able to sell a stock that I bought for not much at all, and it 10x or whatever it did in a very short amount of time, I'd even say, is very is very rewarding. It's a very good feeling, and it's great to put that into some sort of other wealth, and have something other than a stock that goes, oh, look at this pretty stock I have. And now it's like, oh, look at this. Look at what I have. I have this real estate here. And it's just like the next part of that investment. And Tesla's just something I can just continue buying. I can go back into Tesla right now, and buy more stock, but real estate's something that's hard to do. You can't just go, oh, I have, $500. I'm going to go buy some real estate. It doesn't work that way. But you can say, oh, I got $500. I'm going to go buy some Tesla, you know?
Nope, I completely agree with you. And again, like as a long term subscriber of yours and a fan of yours, like I remember those days in 2018, 2019, whatever it was, you started coming out with videos, and you talking about it, and I almost feel like I've seen your entire journey. I remember the videos years ago when you would make videos, and it would be like on your phone, and you would be at a park talking about a stock, and I'd be like, everything he says is amazing. He's absolutely right. And then fast forward to today, you have like your own office, your own system, you got background stuff, and I'm like, man, this guy's coming up. I'm guessing these investments are working out, right? And so, but with that being said, you really hit on something super, super important, and I'm glad you brought it up. And it was the fact that, you wanted to leave money, or you want to leave money for the next generation, for your kids. You're a family man, I'm a family man, and a lot of my subscribers, they're family people, they have kids, a lot of them have grandkids. So a lot of the people listening do have, that next generation already here, so to speak. And one of the things that you talked about on one of your videos also years ago, was you talked about the fact that you opened up an account for your kid. And again, this was like during the early days, but you talked about you started investing for your kid, and you were buying them stock. And I guess I just kind of want to hit on it a little bit on why that's important, and how that has impacted you and your family in terms of being able to buy stock for your kids, knowing that their timeline is literally like 18, 20 years from now before they even inherit the account, and how much of an impact, a massive impact, it can have on a person's life when they graduate 18, and it's not just, okay, go off to college, go discover yourself. If you need student loans, go pull them out. And instead it's like your kids will be able to inherit X amount of money depending how their, stocks and portfolios turn out, 15, 18, 20 years from now. Can you talk about how that's been like, and more importantly, why you think more parents should do it, why you think that's important? Because I think that's probably one of the most underrated things in the entire investment world, honestly, and when it comes to not just investing for yourself, but if you can, putting $50 in stock for your kids, knowing that their time horizon is so much further out than yours, and it can have such a massive impact on the early, stages of adulthood. So, hopefully they don't have to pull out student loans. They don't have to use credit cards, and they don't have to get in debt just to, make it by during their early adulthood, where they spend the rest of their life paying off that debt at extremely high interest rates. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I see. It's very important. And to touch on that video, by the way, that was when I only had one kid when I made that video that you're talking about. Now I have two kids. I have a 16-month-old, and my first kid, he's 5 years old. He's kind of went through some of these struggles as an entrepreneur that I had in his early days. Uh, I wouldn't say we were poor, but I definitely, you invest a lot in your ambitions. You invest a lot into your future and trying to succeed, at things you're doing. And when I started to decide, I'm spending so much money to try to make a little bit of money on a business. What if I was to just put money in and try to make even more money, put my money into already established things that are, doing much better than what I'm doing. And when I started doing that for myself and seeing the potential there, and then start doing it for my son, uh, and I was just doing small amounts. I mean, when he was a baby, I wasn't even doing, even $50. I was just doing the math in my head. It's like, well, if I do, $10, here, and then I do, on Monday, maybe check the stock again and buy more fraction shares of it, which is, something I was doing a bit there with him, and I would just keep at that. If I wasn't able to, uh, to buy the stock at a price I was comfortable with, I would at least put it in his broker account, and then wait for that opportunity to put it where I wanted it to go. And I just kept at that, and it's nice watching that grow. And I do it in a way where I don't look at my kids as I'm handing you something. It's something that is really going to just help them in life in so many ways. Because looking at the way that I grew up, where I started my first company at 19. In 2005 was when I started my first business, and that was something that was just a struggle. And I didn't have the opportunity to go to the college that I wanted to. I got accepted into the college that would have been great, but I didn't have the money to go to my college. And I ended up going to a trade school, which for computer programming that didn't do great things for me. There was nothing really good that came out of it. And I was just like, man, just looking at where I had come from and the things that I've done, and just setting my kids up for better opportunities to where they're not trying to jump into something like start their own company and invest way more money than they can even imagine of at a very young age, and to probably get nowhere at it. That's where I was thinking, is just setting them up with that opportunity to have something to do something with to better their life in some sort of way. It doesn't even need to be for college. It can be for anything. Was the way I was thinking, but I don't want it to be something that makes them feel like that they're going to uh, not have to accomplish anything in their life. It's just something that betters them in some sort of way. But putting, 10, $20 a week at a very young age and watching that compound, I can really grow into something great. And looking at my 5-year-old portfolio, and just all I did was invested into different bonds and ETFs for him, and watching that do what it has done, and still sticking through that with when the whole market dropped, and in March of 2020 and just continue doing that. It's been very nice watching what my 5-year-old portfolio has done, which is, far more impressive than what my 16-month-old's portfolio is, of course. But it's really cool and it's really neat, and it's something that is very beneficial for kids, especially for parents that are not making a lot of money right now, that are still grinding, still trying to get where they want to be, and that are still working that job and trying to hope that you're going to get that promotion someday. It doesn't hurt to put $5-10 aside into a brokerage, and then eventually buy something like an ETF, which is what I would recommend: ETFs and bonds for the kids, just out of safety. At that young age, you don't know what's going to happen with what company or what it's going to eventually invest into over time. Just to do something like that, I think, is great, and it really helps set them up a lot for the future, and gets them where they want to be faster, in my opinion. Because it took me literally into my 30s to get where I wanted to be, to get where I'm comfortable with going, yeah, this is great. Even though I have accomplished so much at a young age, until I really started investing in the stock market a lot, and taking it very serious, is where I saw the most success in my life. I didn't see it a whole lot on trying to build that job. I saw it when I started investing. So getting into investing early, in my opinion, is key, and it's the greatest way to build wealth is going that route. And so you start kids out at the best possible way, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree with you 100%. Me, I got 3 kids, and I invest for all 3 of them, and their gains have just been, extraordinary. I mean, to say the least, and, I know my son here, he's kind of stuck right now between 80 to 100,000, but, when he breaks it, the sky's the limit. And so, but people ask me all the time, like, how'd you get him to this point? And I'm like, well, I didn't put all, 80,000 overnight. It took months and years of investing. But, it doesn't hurt that one of his first investments was Tesla in 2018. It doesn't hurt that I put I forgot how much I put. I put $2,000 one time, for him, in Tesla stock, when it hit the $200 mark, when it fell from that 420 mark, from Elon's infamous 420 tweet. I'm pretty sure you remember that one. And I bought him 10 shares back then, on that specific day. And so, I didn't put all the money in at once, and the vast majority of all his money in his account is, pretty much all just, gains. It's just stock market gains. I've probably put less than, I know for sure, less than 10 grand in his account, but, watching it where it is now, just compound, it works, people. It really does. And so with that, to finish off this clip in this interview, one of the things I wanted to see if you can send some departing words of wisdom and guidance, again, as a real long-term investor. And as people don't understand, but when you've been invested in Tesla for a very long time, you go through so many ups and downs and dips. And even for me, I've owned Bitcoin for, a while now, and I felt like I've gone through 700 pullbacks and 900 crashes and 10,000 dips just owning Bitcoin for, as long as I have. And, my best friends, owned it way longer than I have. And so being in the crypto market, for a while now, and being a Tesla investor and being a Neo investor, and nowadays also investing in a couple of OTCs that I really like these dips can be dramatic. They can be vicious. They can be relentless at times. And obviously you've seen the market over the last, couple, 2, 3, 4 months, just killing everything. If you could just give some guidance and some advice, as someone that has probably seen their portfolio fall 50% on several occasions, probably over the years, even 2018 in regards to the trade war. I remember how that impacted the market as well. What is some guidance and some advice you would give to some new retail investors who are going through their first pullback and their first stock market correction? Because I'm going to say about 40% of my subscriber base, maybe 30%, have been investing since February and March of last year. And so, they went through that March sell off. And they saw the whole market crash, and they saw me yelling at them, telling them to buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, once in a generation buying opportunity. And then they saw the volatility that happened during the election cycle when no one knew if, who was going to win between Biden and Trump. And now, the other 60% of my subscriber base is pretty much going through their first stock market pullback and stock market correction over the last few months. And a lot of them are contemplating and debating if investing is even worth it, if they should just pull everything out and call it a day and just quit, and stock market is stupid and this doesn't work and this is the worst idea ever and I don't want to ever put any more money. I've already lost so much money. As someone that, is a veteran in this game in terms of having battle scars, what are some things you would tell them that helped you get to the place that you are in life, where not only have you had massive stock market gains, but now you've gotten to the point where you can pull some of that money out and invest in multiple real estate properties? Like I don't want to say you made it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as someone that's definitely way better off than they were 5-10 years ago, what would you tell them? Because I'm pretty sure where they are now is where you were probably 5-10 years ago. What would you tell them to kind of like remind them that this journey is not only worth it, but this is moments you got to take advantage of?
Yeah. So the way I look at the whole investment thing is you got to buy those dips. Like if you're seeing the market drop and you like that company, if you like Tesla and you like everything that Tesla is doing, and you know that Tesla's going to be around, like you don't have that mindset that you see the stock price going down, that the company is going to go away. That's not the case. What is going on is that stock is going on sale. You're having a new opportunity to buy that stock at a lower price. Yeah, you might be seeing your portfolio worth going down, but don't think too much about that. Think about the bargain that you're getting. Think about that sale that stock is right now, and buying that dip that stock is on, and then watching that grow over time. In my opinion, is great because a good example is one of my friends that I got to invest. I got him to invest into Neo right when, like maybe the day after their IPO, or a couple of days after the IPO. I got him to invest into that, and he bought I think like 30 shares, and then he continued to buy a little bit as they were $2. Like I had to always convince this guy, hey, buy it when just keep buying the stock anyways. And he put $20 in, buy 10 shares in the EO at $2, and he bought his first share of Tesla at $180 back in 2019. He bought Tesla for I think it was $180, very cheap to buy Tesla back then, and over literally a year, that one those that $200 you spent on Neo stock and that $200 you spent on Tesla made him a lot of money just holding on, just convincing him to hold on to that. The reward that he got from that was absolutely amazing. When you think that Tesla split 5 times, you look at the price of Tesla right now. It's worth a lot more right now than it was for one share that would be the equivalent of 5 shares now in 2019. And just seeing where it's done, like seeing what happens over time, it just makes more sense to hold on to that stock. And especially if you're somebody that is trying to make more money, if you're treating the stock market as a hustle, you're doing it the wrong way, because the stock market itself is something that is working for you. It's making you the money. It's giving you those opportunities to buy that stock at that lower price, and then have it make more money in the future. People that would sell their stock to try to do something outside of the market, outside of investing, and invest into something that could possibly benefit them in some other way. I know from experience that it doesn't work anywhere near what the market does for you, what you're going to get out of this. Because I was somebody that was, in my opinion, like a entrepreneur that had a lot of potential to go somewhere. I was the first merchandise guy for YouTube. I was the original person that was producing clothing for everybody that was on YouTube that was trying to market their own merchandise. So I had customers like Smosh was my first big customer, and chasing something like that, and building a business on that didn't make me anywhere near the amount of money from what I invested into something like that did to just putting my money in the stock market and keeping it there and letting it compound, because you're just going to get the greatest reward from it. You can safely work a job and just dash money away in the stock market, and over time that's going to grow into something that is that's amazing. So it's worth just sticking with it. It's worth holding on to it and growing, and you're going to see your wealth grow, in my opinion, more from that than it would from many other things that you might try in life. So I would recommend just hold on, just keep going, just keep at it, and keep buying that dip, buy that stock on sell, and over time you're going to you will do great, in my opinion, because there's so many other things you can put your money into that won't give you that same return as the stock market will, as compounding will over time. It's just absolutely amazing. There's so many benefits to it, and then being able to take that money and putting it somewhere else, putting it into something else that's going to generate you money, like real estate. If you were somebody that bought real estate, even a year ago, and you bought a house that was a certain amount of money from money that you sold your stocks from, you would have made an insane amount of money just in a short amount of time. So it's just great to continue an investment journey and taking it somewhere, in my opinion, than just taking it out and cutting your losses, or trying to secure it and risk taxes or anything that you could get from it that could set you back more than it would be if you would have just held and continue buying.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with you 100%. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. This was a great interview. We really appreciate you coming on and telling, the information about Neo and everything else we talked about tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right, man. We're going to let you go. You have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. And hopefully we can bring you back on soon, because obviously Neo is a company that's not going away anytime soon.
It sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.